on Thursday, but for the time being, a ridge of high pressure means largely dry to end this evening and for the first part of the night too. Any showers becoming confined to eastern areas before drifting into the North Sea, but eventually turning cloudier with that wet and windy weather returning from the west, particularly across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland and northern parts of England, where it could turn heavy at times and often quite blustery by the morning. But even across the south, the rain largely confined to western areas, but plenty of low cloud, which means it's going to be quite a murky morning for many. And outbreaks of rain set to continue, particularly across Scotland, where once again it is going to be the heaviest in the west. So a very wet start as we head into tomorrow, turning very blustery, particularly around exposed coasts. And once again across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a wet start with some heavy outbreaks of rain at times and plenty of low cloud across the rest of England and Wales. Quite a dank start to the day. And I'm afraid there's not much improvement across northern areas. It's likely we'll see a continuation of outbreaks of rain, still heavy at times and still quite blustery. It perhaps may ease off a little bit across central areas and across the southeast, but still plenty of cloud around. But across these areas, that's where it's still going to feel rather warm, still highs reaching around the low 20s, but across the far north, still not particularly cold, but obviously not feeling quite as pleasant under the cloud and rain. Then through into the evening, still some outbreaks of rain at times, not really easing away until we reach Friday, but even still there's a chance of some drizzly showers. And for the weekend, I'm afraid there's further rain on its way, particularly Saturday, where we could see some quite wet weather and temperatures remaining around similar.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Road users face high winds on the A9 Dornoch Bridge. The M6 northbound between junctions 22 and 23 has minor delays due to a broken down vehicle. Exercise caution. Congestion and delays are on the A52 eastbound near Nottinghamshire. The M48 westbound between junctions 1 and 2 also has congestion due to an incident. The M25 clockwise at junction 15 from the M4 eastbound has lane closures following an accident. Diversions remain at M4 eastbound junction 37 due to planned maintenance. And on the trains, Chiltern Railways and Cross Country report disruptions at Oxford. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
You could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with skyroof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewberry, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs Co. Coming up tonight, a question for you. Is it time to decriminalise cannabis for personal use? Sadiq Khan has become the latest politician to call for that. And should the ethnicity of criminal suspects be released as standard? There's quite the debate happening about that off the back of the Southport and Liverpool atrocities. What's your thoughts? And as a floundering UK water company, get this, is fined a record £122.7 million for breaches. A simple question, is it time then to accept that privatisation of water has failed? And after multiple pay rises, the BMA is now polling its members for further strike action. I mean, some of these sums that they're talking about are eye-watering, a potential additional 29%. What do you think to that? And look at this, it's almost like Sadiq Khan knew who was going to be on my panel tonight when he started talking about cannabis, none other than Peter Hitchens, the columnist for The Mail on Sunday. Alongside him, Aaron Bastani, the founder of Navara Media. We've got a lot to get stuck into, but before we start, let's cross live and give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
A very good evening to you. The top story tonight at 6. Sir Keir Starmer has visited Liverpool to meet police after a car drove into crowds celebrating the city's football victory. 7 people are still in hospital tonight, and police say they've identified 79 injured in Monday's incident. A 53-year-old man remains in custody on suspicion of attempted murder, dangerous driving and drug driving. A fundraiser for victims has already topped £20,000. Sir Keir Starmer called the scenes awful and said it was vital to see the investigation firsthand.
No, thank you all for making time. It's really important for me to be here. The scenes on Monday were just awful to see how incredible joy and an amazing achievement turned to horror in a moment. And Steve, the Mayor's been keeping me informed and updated along with my team, but it's really important to be here to go through this firsthand with you. So thank you for making time and ensuring that I get to see the detail in the way that I'd like to. Thank you.
In breaking news tonight, Andrew and Tristan Tate have been charged with over 20 offences in the UK, including rape, human trafficking and controlling prostitution. According to reports emerging in the Telegraph newspaper, Andrew faces 10 charges against 3 women, while his brother Tristan faces 11 charges linked to one of the same alleged victims. A European arrest warrant has also been issued, but the pair must first face separate criminal proceedings in Romania. The Crown Prosecution Service is warning the public not to share anything online that could prejudice the trial. The brothers deny all charges in both countries. And also breaking this evening, Russia has said in the last hour or so that it is ready to put a peace deal on the table, offering Ukraine a settlement in Istanbul at a meeting taking place there on the 2nd of June. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov claims the document lays out Moscow's full position on ending the war and tackling its so-called root causes. The Russian delegation at that meeting in Istanbul will present the plan and offer clarifications, they say, in direct talks. If it goes ahead, it would be the second round of resumed face-to-face negotiations between the two countries, but Ukraine has yet to respond. Back here at home, top police and security chiefs are warning the government not to trade safety for space as early prisoner release plans are sparking alarm. In a joint call, leaders from the Met Police, MI5 and the National Crime Agency say the move risks public safety. They're also warning that out of prison must, quote, not mean out of control. Well, it's emerged today that Heathrow's boss was asleep on his phone on silent as the airport shut down in March, according to a new review. The CEO, Thomas Waldby, didn't find out about the emergency until nearly 6 hours after operations were suspended due to a substation fire. Alerts and calls failed to reach him overnight, and more than 270,000 passengers were grounded. Airlines cost millions. The independent Kelly review says the right decisions were made under pressure, but calls for better emergency contact systems. Heathrow has since said that it is acting on the report's recommendations to future-proof its infrastructure. Thames Water has been hit with a record £122 million fine for illegal sewage spills and breaking rules on shareholder payouts. Regulator Ofwat says the firm let down its customers and spilled sewage from storm overflows routinely, not just during heavy rain. Over £100 million of fine covers sewage breaches, while just over £18 million relates to those payouts, some made while the firm was in deep financial trouble. It comes as the company, drowning in nearly £20 billion of debt, continues its urgent surge for fresh investment. And an update from the world of sport for you. Emma Raducanu is sadly out of the French Open tonight after a straight sets defeat to the defending champion Iga Swiatek. The British number one was overpowered 6-1, 6-2 in just over an hour. Swiatek dominated from the start. She broke Raducanu's serve 5 times and hit 26 winners. It is now the third time the Pole has reached round 3 without dropping a single set. Raducanu, though, now turns her focus to Wimbledon, which, of course, starts in just over a month's time. Those are the latest headlines. A full roundup from the newsroom in an hour. Now, though, it's over to Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that. My name is Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs Co with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Peter Hitchens, the columnist for the Mail on Sunday, and Aaron Bastani, the founder of Navara Media. Good evening, gents, to both of you. You're very welcome tonight. What did you think to that headline update there in the bulletins, Peter, that peace may be on its way when it comes to the situation in Ukraine? Do you believe that?
Well, I doubt it very much, because whatever is acceptable to the Russians is very unlikely to be acceptable to the Ukrainians. And vice versa. I think it's incredibly difficult to end wars, which is one of the reasons why I'm so very much against starting them.
Are you optimistic about it, Aaron?
Not really. Just to echo what Peter said, when you've got the leverage and the upper hand that the Russians presently have after expending so much political capital, treasure, lost lives, you're not just going to give that up for nothing. And I suspect what the Russians are going to ask for, the Ukrainians right now are going to be unwilling to relinquish.
What do you think to it at home? Do you have any optimism when you listen to that story there in the bulletins about potential peace talks? Do you sit there and think, finally, there's an end to it or not? I always found this situation in Ukraine really interesting because so many people sit on their comfy sofas, don't they, urging Ukraine to go on and fight all the way. I bet my bottom dollar, though, if it came to actually Britain having to put boots on the ground and it was their kids being on the front line, they might have a potential different thought. Anyway, what's your thoughts on that? And all the rest of it, we've got so much, ladies and gents, that we need to discuss with you tonight, whether it's water, whether it's crime and ethnicity and the actual state of crime and prisons. I always like to get into that. And, of course, cannabis. Sadiq Khan and his thoughts on that. Join the conversation in all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursale. Of course, you can tweet or you can X me. But wherever you are watching or listening tonight, you're very welcome indeed. So let's pick up on that story then. You also heard in the bulletins there about Thames Water. They have been fined almost £130 million. This is for two things. It's for breaching rules basically about sewage and also for breaching rules when it comes to how they've been paying some of their dividends out. This is a record penalty, Aaron Bastani, and this is a topic I know that you are very passionate about. You know, some people are saying now it's time for these companies essentially to not be privatised any longer. What do you think?
Well, I think certainly in the case of Thames Water and Southern Water, they're so badly administered. They so flagrantly break the rules. They still pay dividends. They still give top executives top dollar. I think those two companies should be taken into public ownership. There are other firms. I would favour blanket public ownership for the water sector. But there are other firms, if we're saying there's not the money to do that right now and to invest into those presently privatised companies, other firms can manage. But Thames Water and Southern Water, but particularly Thames Water, is a basket case. There's no other word for it. This will keep on happening. Thames Water has about £20 billion worth of debt. It also has to invest about $20 billion, the best part of, into maintaining its present infrastructure. Southern's in a very similar situation. So they basically have no money. They are broadly insolvent. They're in a ton of debt. And they've got to invest a ton of money, and people's bills are going to go up, have to go up a hell of a lot. And so I just don't think there's going to be the consent for it. Finally, on Thames and Southern, and this is really remarkable, Michelle, they say we need to invest $20 billion to upgrade our infrastructure so people can have the kind of services they naturally expect. Thames and Southern don't really know the state of around 30% of their network. So imagine you said, you and your partner, we're going to do the house up, or Peter and his wife, or anybody out there listening, watching, we're going to remortgage the house, the mortgage is up, and we're going to pay to remodel the kitchen and get a new bathroom and, you know, convert the attic, but you don't know what 30% of the house even looks like. You don't know if you've got running water, you don't know if the central heating works, maybe the entire roof needs to be replaced. You would be a moron to make plans and talk about how much you need to spend to do up the house when you don't even know what 30% of that house even looks like, the condition it's even in. It's the exact same with their infrastructure. They have no idea what 1/3 of their own network looks like.
But in Scotland, where it is essentially nationalised, they lack a lot of sensors in a lot of their water places, so they don't actually know the state of a lot of what they're producing and managing, and that's under national ownership.
Yeah. You can have very bad public ownership, you can have very good public ownership. We have had, over the last 35 years, very, very bad private ownership. So you've had about 100 billion in terms of debt put onto these privatised companies since the early 1990s. It wasn't there. At the same time, they've paid a ton of dividends, I think the best part of 50 billion between all of them, and bills are going up. Now, one problem is for people like me who say, bring it into public ownership, bills are going to have to go up anyway. But people need to be honest now with punters out there. That's going to happen, whether it's private or public ownership.
What do you make to that at home? Pete Hitchens, your thoughts?
Well, I think we have to see now a tendency towards deprivatisation going on. It's happening with the railways as well. Everyone is acknowledging that the privatisation was a catastrophe of both water and railways, but they can't afford to actually renationalise them into the sort of quite efficient corporations which they were before nationalisation. They can't get back the money which has been hoovered out of them in various ways and is lost to the country forever either. And this is a difficulty. It's one of the many points at which we have to say either we decide as a country that we're going to have a major reckoning with just how bad everything is. And your point about them not even knowing the state of their own network is extremely powerful there. That, I'm sure, is true of a lot of public enterprises. They really aren't in control of and don't know much about what they have. We really do need a national audit on the basis of what we can actually afford. And if we start living within our means again, which I think we could be a happy and prosperous country, but just at a lower level of international significance than the one we currently like to pose at. I think that this is an important warning of where things will go if we don't. But fining them, and who is going to pay this fine? And they say it's not. Well, hang on a minute. But they say it won't be passed on to the customers. Well, probably not directly. You're not going to get a thing on your bill saying part of your bill is because of the fine. But I'll bet you that it will go up, and it will be the customers who pay it. None of the people actually responsible.
I find it interesting what's going to happen to that money. So I assume it's just going to go into the money pit.
Well, it's so symbolic. It doesn't seem to me to be a serious approach. You say, oh, look, we're punishing these people, so you should feel satisfied. I'm not at all pleased by it. I remember once the Thames Water, I think, was going on about how people were using too much water, and around the corner from where I live was a whopping great leak, and it had been going on for months, and I kept ringing them up about it. And eventually it became clear that they weren't interested in fixing it. Because it simply wasn't big enough. And I'm sure there are many, many of those. I just don't think that these companies are particularly well run. I don't think that nationalisation by itself will solve anything. If we want to have proper renationalisation and the reconstruction of proper public corporations, of things where you need public ownership, such as, say, the Royal Air Force. I mean, imagine if the Royal Air Force had to function, the fighter squadrons had to lease their planes from a rolling stock type company. As happens in the railways. It's nonsense. So you would never do that for a proper national institution. So why do you do it for water or railways?
Well, $1 million question. What do you think to it all? Get in touch and tell me. I can tell you now. I'm looking at the inbox. The conversation that has really, really got you guys talking is cannabis and Sadiq Khan's comments on that. So let's get into that, shall we? After the break, I bet Peter's very excited. I secretly think it's one of his favourite topics. Let's indulge it then in 2.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Recently, Meghan Markle did a cookery show.
She did.
What happened? Because you made a certain comment and she...
I was asked by a national newspaper to basically review the show, what I thought from a chef's perspective. So I did, and really the opinions came across quite strong.
What kind of things did you say? Can you say?
Well, I didn't think it was a great show, to be honest with you. I felt that it was a bit forced and fake and stuff, which I've been on this show on GB News and explained that before. But I think the problems with Meghan was that Netflix are looking for things to do with her. She's not going to be racing cars and she's not going to be doing this and she's not going to be doing that. So I think they've kind of thrown her into the whole kind of cookery thing, make a nice show about it and, try and recoup some money.
And in it, there was a potential that you may have said that she didn't appear to be a great chef or she might not be able to cook or...
Well, my understanding...
Recount what you can say and then we don't want you to get in trouble.
No, I think that, again, I go back to what I just said then. I think they've kind of thrown her into something... They thought to themselves what they're going to do with Meghan next. And basically they've kind of thought, well, most people can cook. Let's create a cookery show. Let's make her the new Martha Stewart. Let's try and recoup some money. Let's do, I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to bring out pans and knives and tea towels as well as what she's already launched already. And, I think it's... From a chef's perspective, it's very disappointing that streaming sites are, backing people who have got really no experience in the industry and don't really have the right to be teaching people how to cook.
Well, she did make a really nice sort of like fruit rainbow where she put all the fruit in a thing in one on the other. And...
That must have been episode 1 because I stopped after episode 1.
Though, do you?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, Michelle Dewberry, Peter Hitchens and Aaron Bastani with you until 7 o'clock. The London Mayor Sadiq Khan, he's basically become the latest politician. He's speaking out today, voicing support about decriminalising what he calls essentially personalised use of cannabis. His argument is very much around stop and search. Let's listen to Lord Faulkner, who chairs the organisation that Sadiq Khan set up to look into this.
Cannabis is the most commonly used criminal recreational drug, and it's also used to relieve genuinely symptoms of certain illnesses. The current law treats cannabis the same as a whole range of much more serious drugs. The right course now, we think, is keep dealing criminal, but make sure that possession is not a crime. If you continue with possession as a crime, you continue to have problems between the police and ethnic communities. Stop and search in London, for example, is most commonly based on, quote, the smell of cannabis. And it is most commonly used, disproportionately used, against young black men.
Peter Hitchens, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, saying that we should decriminalise cannabis is such a laughable thing to do. Cannabis in London and indeed most of the country has been effectively decriminalised since about 1995. It's very, very hard to get police officers to take the slightest notice of anybody smoking or using or possessing. It has been for a very long time. In 1973, the then Lord Chancellor, that well-known Trotskyist Lord Hailsham, told magistrates to go easy on cannabis possession, and they duly did. It's been a very, very long time in this country since marijuana has been seriously has been seriously prohibited by the law, even though technically the Misuse of Drugs Act says that the penalty for possessing it is 5 years in prison plus an unlimited fine, which is quite stiff. And the reason for this has been the campaigns of people, establishment people, who have for a long time falsely believed that it was a harmless drug. It's constantly being described by people as a soft drug, as a recreational drug, as something which really you can take without doing yourself any damage. But there is more and more correlation between the use of marijuana and serious, lifelong, incurable mental illness, particularly among the young. And now that it's available, as anybody who with eyes to see and noses to smell and ears to hear knows, available in schools, generally from around the age of 11, though sometimes even earlier, it has been found in primary schools. It's being used by children of 11 and 12 and 13, whose brains are anything but formed and who are particularly vulnerable to the dangers which it poses. I think we have an enormous explosion of mental health waiting for us not very far down the road because of the laxness on this issue that we've shown already. For people such as Lord Faulkner, who really ought to be a responsible adult, rather than a panderer to a really rather nasty lobby, to start talking about relaxing the laws on it, what signal does this send? As I say, there is one in London. King's College is currently running the first really large survey on cannabis and its effects on the brain, which I think began taking evidence in 2022 and is by no means complete. If they really are interested in discussing this matter, why didn't they wait for King's College to come up with their results? But they haven't done that. I'm astounded. The things which happen to people, this is not theoretical for me, though it's much less theoretical for my friend Patrick Cockburn, whose son Henry was introduced to marijuana at a grammar school in Canterbury and suffered terrible mental illness as a result, which brought the most appalling grief both to himself and to his family. And when Patrick very bravely went public with this in a book that everybody should read called Henry's Demons, he was astounded by the number of his colleagues and friends who came up to him quietly in corners and said, Patrick, exactly the same thing has happened to me. It's a plague. And it's disastrous. And what you'll also find is there is a growing number of crimes, really horrible crimes, committed by people who have gone. This is not when they're high. It's people who have become insane as a result, I believe, of marijuana use. Certainly they have been marijuana users. And my friend Ross Granger has produced a book, which again I recommend, called Attack or Smoke Cannabis. He compiled from local newspapers the stories which don't make it into the national press anymore because they're so commonplace, of hideous violence, amongst others against small children, committed by people whose brains have been turned after long-term cannabis use. If you look at the crime reports in the newspapers with any care, you will find it present in the background of so many violent crimes. To dismiss it as something that we can just let go and not pay any attention to and decriminalise is so irresponsible. I can't believe it when people do it.
Richard has been in touch saying, Michelle, long story short, I don't agree with Sadiq Khan on anything, but on this, he's absolutely right. Richard, you go on to tell me that you've smoked cannabis since you were a young teenager, and now you say you're almost at retirement age, and you say you don't feel like it's done you any harm. But
well, how would he know?
Well, Jeremy...
He would be the last person to know. For all we know, he could have been poet laureate or had a Nobel Prize if he hadn't been smoking it. All he knows is what he's like now.
Well, there you go. That's your challenge from Peter. How do you know it's not harmed you? Jeremy says, Michelle, as a parent, if you've ever had a child who smoked cannabis and as a result ended up being sectioned with severe mental health issues, you'd soon realise that Sadiq Khan's suggestion is one of the most ridiculous and dangerous ones ever. Exactly. He goes on to say he believes that cannabis use is far more responsible for a vast number of mental health issues across the UK than is currently understood. Aaron Bastani, your thoughts?
So Peter's saying something, I'm going to really disagree with Peter here. Peter's saying something which conflicts in terms of its internal logic. On the one hand, you're saying it's already been de facto decriminalised for possession, which is true. I mean, this is just true. It has been, and I think you're right with the dates as well, since the mid-1990s. But then you disagree with, effectively, various authorities. In this instance, I presume it's the London Metropolitan Police Service, given it's Sadiq Khan, basically turning what is de facto into how they operationalise law enforcement. And I suppose the argument they would make is not necessarily it's a soft drug or it's not a problem or it's good for you or whatever. I don't know what they're saying. But presumably they would say, we expend so many resources, so much police time in terms of enforcing this stuff. So unfairly as well, because, like you say, 99% of the time it's not enforced. Sometimes it is enforced.
Yeah.
There's the bureaucracy when it is enforced. Maybe we should just be more consistent, more honest, more open about where we are with this, apply equally, and then create less bureaucracy for police officers.
Consistency cuts both ways. You can be consistent in non-enforcement, or you can be consistent in enforcement. My belief is we should be consistent in enforcement. My response to the stop-and-search business is this. Plainly, it's sometimes used as a holding charge because it's very easy to prove when they're trying to get people for something else. But if they're stopping and searching black people and no white people, then I would say don't level that out by ceasing to stop and search black people. Stop and search more white people. Stop and search more rich people. Stand outside the gates of Eton College if you want and stop and search them. I'm absolutely an equal opportunity stop and searcher in this matter because everybody deserves to be protected from it. The key issue is actually an issue for parents. And it's interesting that the best contribution that Michelle has had has been from a parent. Parents are terrified. Any of them who've seen what happens to children whose brains are wrecked by this substance are terrified. They have nowhere to turn. The police don't enforce the law. The schools teach harm reduction rubbish. Their children are under constant peer pressure at school to take this drug, which they know will ruin their lives. The only answer that the law's ever had to this is for people to be able to say realistically, if I am stupid enough to buy this from you and I am caught, I'm likely to go to prison. I will never be able to travel to the United States and many other countries for the rest of my life. I won't be able to get a decent job. That's the result of actually prosecuting it. This is what Japan does. And this is what South Korea does. And these are democratic, free, law-governed countries, and they enforce their marijuana laws, and as a result, they do not have the problems which we have, just as we used to enforce ours before 1965. It can be made to work, you just need resolve to do it.
I can tell you, the inbox, you guys really are getting in touch with strong opinions on this topic. I'll bring you back into the conversation after the break, but I also want to ask you, do you think that ethnicity data should be released as standard when it comes to criminal suspects? That, of course, off the back of the situation in Liverpool and Southport. I'll see you in 2.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Whilst eastern parts of Europe are having some further heavy rain, causing some issues here, it's a different story further west. A largely settled picture, a few showery bursts perhaps affecting the Canaries, but likely to avoid most of these. Also largely dry on Thursday across much of Spain and Portugal. A large chunk of Italy having a fine picture, but still some showery rain towards the east, and then a very wet story across more eastern parts, across Greece and Turkey, for example. See you later.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After a day of sunshine and showers, it'll eventually turn dry into this evening. Only for a time though, a return of some wet and windy weather from the west, leading us into an unsettled day tomorrow. But for the time being, a ridge of high pressure largely easing away any showers, but outbreaks of rain soon moving their way into Northern Ireland for the first part of the evening and eventually into western parts of England and Scotland, and turning quite heavy at times, particularly across western areas, and quite blustery too, particularly around exposed coasts of Scotland. But even elsewhere across England and Wales, it's going to be quite a damp and dank start to the day. But with the cloud outbreaks of rain, that does mean it's going to keep temperatures up, so it should be still quite a mild start to the day. And I'm afraid the outbreaks of rain are set to continue for much of the day as well, particularly across Scotland, where still it's going to turn heavy and still quite blustery at times through the course of the morning. Fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, quite a wet start and some quite low cloud, leading to quite a misty, murky start, and fairly similar elsewhere across England and Wales, particularly western parts of Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall, some damp areas to start here. And it's set to continue through much of the day, still some quite heavy and blustery outbreaks, particularly across Scotland. Those central areas, parts of the southeast, any rain should eventually ease away, but it's still likely to remain quite cloudy, but it's still going to be fairly warm. Highs just about reaching the low 20s across the southeast, and it's still not going to be particularly cold either across the north, though obviously it's going to be quite a wet afternoon. Then heading into Friday, not quite as much rain, but it's still going to be damp at times. This system slowly sinking its way southward, leading us to some drizzly outbreaks and potentially turning a little bit brighter across Scotland, Northern Ireland. There's still a risk of showers here, but it's going to feel quite warm, quite humid, and it's likely we'll see further outbreaks of rain, particularly on Saturday across northern areas, and still temperatures across the south in the low 20s.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello everybody, I hope you're all well. I am Michelle Dewberry, this is Dewbs Co. If you're just tuning in, I've got Peter Hitchens, the columnist for The Mail on Sunday, alongside me, and Aaron Bastani, the founder of Navara Media. We've just been talking about the state of the water companies in this country. Averant, I think that's how I say your name. In Essex, you're saying, Michelle, these water companies should essentially be prosecuted for dereliction of duty. Elizabeth asks, where are these fines going, Michelle? Well, the Treasury is the answer to that, Elizabeth, although we don't really know what they're going to be spending that money on. Darren in Loughborough, you've got a good idea. I think this is quite a smart idea, actually, if I say so myself, Darren. You're suggesting, instead of fining these water companies and taking the money and putting it just into the black pit that is the Treasury, why wasn't that fine enforced as a discount across the board on consumer bills? I quite like that idea. I don't think it's going to get off the ground, but I do quite like it. We also then moved on to debating cannabis. If you've missed all this, you can watch it back. Doreen from Devon. I like it when you guys tell me where you're from. Doreen in Devon, she says, cannabis should not be legalised. My grandson became psychotic and he was sectioned and he was absolutely fine before he got persuaded to take it. He will never be the same again. He will not ever be able to work again. And she says, it is heartbreaking. Michelle, please tell people, do not try it because you simply do not know how that drug will affect you. Michael in Edinburgh, he says, my son completely ruined his life smoking cannabis at the age of 13. It was all unbeknown to his mother and I at the time. He has now spent multiple years dealing with severe paranoid schizophrenia. He was a beautiful, beautiful child who essentially has had his life ruined. Oh, that's put goosebumps on my arm, because what parent would want this for their child? Lots of you have got in touch there saying that actually you do like to use cannabis. Some of you have got medical ailments that you think it actually helps you with, but that is a subject that really has got you talking. You have strong opinions on that one. I can tell you as well something that I know you'll have strong opinions on. After the horrendous scenes that unfolded in Liverpool, of course, this week, many of you were very quick to point out that actually the police force very, very quickly released information relating to the ethnicity of the suspect that they had in mind. This has formed quite a conversation and quite a debate. Let's listen to the Met Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, today.
Some content will be all over social media very, very quickly. People will be making guesses and inferences. I think in that world, putting more facts out is the only way to deal with it.
And when we say more facts, or when he says more facts, the conversation is kind of debating about whether or not, as standard, as routine, the ethnicity of the suspects should be released. What do you think to that, Peter Hitchens?
Well, perhaps the people who are in favour of it could tell me exactly why they think it should be so.
Well, because they'll be interested in open, transparent justice. And they will be interested in filling the void that's been created and potential misinformation in social media.
Why do they have to know that, and who's going to spread this potential misinformation, and why should we pander to them? I am a person of the 60s, and one of the most moving things I ever heard was Martin Luther King saying that people should be judged not by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character. I stick by that. I find the whole idea of in cases such as this, giving out the people's skin colour highly suspect. I'd like to know why people think it's a good idea. Maybe they can tell me, because I can't quite see it.
Well, do you think it's a good idea at home? I know many of you will. Get in touch and tell Peter why you think that. Aaron Bastani, your thoughts?
So I don't think it's a good idea, but I think it's probably necessary because...
For what reason?
Well, I'll explain. Because of the vacuum that's created by people, I think, often with malicious intentions, as you kind of hinted at there, often racist intentions, I think, speculating in the absence of concrete information about why somebody has done something, who they are, where they come from. We've got the Southport killing, awful, awful event. In the immediate aftermath of...
Probably more to do with marijuana than anything.
Those killings. Well, I mean, that's an interesting conversation as well.
Yeah, but hang on, because his defence, I'm going off topic, but just to be clear, his defence didn't put anything forward about mental health and drug use and all the rest of it in that case.
I don't care about his defence. What I know is that he entirely changed his character around about the age of 12 or 13, which is what so many of your viewers have been describing happened to children and grandchildren of their acquaintance.
Right, carry on, Aaron.
Yeah, so in the immediate aftermath of what happened there, people were saying it was a Syrian refugee. I think there was even a name attached to this person. They'd come over recently, etc., etc. And I think it probably would have been useful, and this is obviously, this announcement today is probably in response to that. It probably would have been useful for the authorities to say, no, it's not a recently arrived Syrian refugee. Now, I agree with Peter. I don't think that's a good thing, but I think that's sadly the world we live in, and it's a world where everybody has access to publish whatever they think, wherever they want, whenever they want, and state authorities ultimately have to respond to that. They have to step up to the plate. Doesn't mean I like it, but I do think it's somewhat necessary.
A lot of people previously, or a lot of people in power, Peter, might have talked about prejudicing trials, contempt of court, or whatever it is to restrict information. I personally think that that is often been misused, and it's often been misused as an attempt to deliberately suppress information, because stating somebody's ethnicity, stating somebody's skin colour, that's not going to prejudice anything. That's just a fact. It's a statement of fact.
Well, if you start doing it on every occasion that somebody is charged, you're going to have some interesting circumstances, aren't you? And some old lady is finally arrested for shoplifting after 97 previous offences. Are we going to say that the old lady had a white skin, or if somebody is arrested for anything, are we always going to have to give their skin colour in future?
Why not? What's wrong with transparency?
Why? Here's the question. Why? We haven't previously done so.
No, we have.
What are we pandering to here?
Well, we have previously done it, Peter. When people are white, they do that.
I am hugely in favour of the rules against prejudicing trials. I think they're incredibly important for sustaining something which is already under severe attack, the presumption of innocence. It's very difficult for anyone to get a fair trial in a place where there is no rule against contempt of court of the kind which we operate, and I'm very worried about whittling it away. And also, as I say, I really do think people need to be less inclined to go charging after rumours or indeed spreading them than they seem to have been lately, and we shouldn't redesign our society to suit them. We should ask them to reform themselves so that we can continue to live in civilised circumstances.
Yeah, but so I know what some of you think. You and I talk every single night, and I do my best to read pretty much all of the messages that come through to me. So I know what many of you think and feel on these kind of topics. And what people will get in touch with me and say, there is a sense of mistrust towards policing, towards government officials in this country. We essentially have policing by consent in this country, and the law and justice service is supposed to be fair, it's supposed to be impartial, and all the rest of it. And many people, Peter, will feel that there has been a different approach for a criminal who is of a white skin colour versus a criminal that is a brown skin colour or a black skin colour. Often you will see descriptions where, let's just say, you're looking for an attacker. The police will say, we're looking for a white guy, I don't know, brown hair, whatever. You might get an e-fit. Have you seen this guy? Then you'll see the other side of the coin, where very frequently what you'll find is there's been some kind of chemical attack. Have you seen a man? Can you check your doorbell footage for a man? A man? a man, you say, and then automatically, Peter, people feel, and they will then start having conversations about, hold on a second, because if it was a white man, you'd tell us it was a white man. So then people will feel that you're deliberately restricting the information of the skin colour in order to try and create some form of two-tier justice, and that is the sentiment that people have, whether it's right or wrong.
Before giving you any answer on that, I really would have to see something remotely resembling research and facts on it.
Well, I remember. I can remember. I'm sure it was the case of.
Necessarily think that it's an.
What was that? What was that chemical attacker? I want to say, was it Samuel Abedi? What was his name? Do you remember the chemical attacker in Clapham? Does anyone remember this? I'm testing my memory real time. But the guy that did it was an Abdul Azidi, that's it, someone just told me. He did a chemical attack. It wasn't acid, actually. I think it was some kind of alkaline substance or something like that. I remember the early calls for him, that attacker. Has anyone seen him? And I'm sure, and I'm happy to be corrected, I'm sure that all the descriptions there was, have you seen a man? Have you seen a man? And it immediately sparks conversation and speculation. I should
point out, Michelle, also there's a complete difference between putting out information to try and catch a suspect who hasn't been detained and putting out information on somebody who has been detained and who's been charged. They're two different circumstances.
But so what is it that you're concerned about? So you're saying
I'm not concerned at all. I don't want this change. I would like the people who want this change to explain to me exactly why it is they want it.
I can expect. Well, but they also say public order, right? We saw public disorder last year.
We did see public disorder,
precisely because there wasn't that early strategic messaging from the authorities about what happened.
Or is it because certain people tried to give the impression that something was being suppressed?
Yeah, but if we take your theory,
which actually wasn't really,
that something's being suppressed, let's just say, the way to counter that is with honest, accurate fact.
Well, okay.
Isn't it?
And where somebody's skin colour is relevant, then it ought to be released, and where it's not relevant, then it oughtn't to be.
Well, I think
if you're hunting for a suspect and you're pretty certain of the suspect's skin colour, then you can say whatever colour it is while you're hunting for them.
Well, I would like more transparency
what are you doing it for
on a lot more things, actually, not just skin colour.
It's a different. I still don't know exactly what it is that those who are calling for this think it will achieve.
I think we've both explained it relatively articulately. If anyone at home can articulate it even better, so Peter leaves tonight with a sense of, yes, I get it, might not agree with it, but I get it, then feel free to have a go. Yeah, but I think we've explained it well. Accuracy, transparency, stopping voids, stopping misinformation, and actually reinstalling a trust and a fairness back into the justice system that many people feel has been lost over recent years for obvious reasons. I'll tell you what will be interesting,
That's a much bigger job than that, I can tell you.
Well, I'll tell you what will be interesting, ladies and gents, because they've set a bit of a precedent now. So they've come out and said this white 53-year-old British man, they've said that almost instantly. So let's hope that there is not a mass casualty event anytime soon. I really, really hope that that is not the case. But if, unfortunately, there is, let's see how quickly information gets released. Again, we shall see. Time will tell. And if you want to explain better to Peter, do feel free to contact me all the usual ways. Coming up after the break, junior doctors, as they used to be called, resident doctors as they're called now. Would you support them going on strike again for more money? You tell me.
Nigel is back.
Good evening.
Unfiltered.
Are these proposals bold enough?
Uncompromising.
Will it bring growth?
Unmissable.
We as a country are brilliant.
Nigel Farage returns this Tuesday from 7 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dawdney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello everyone, welcome back. Michelle Dewberry, Peter Hitchens and Aaron Bastani alongside me. Let me take you back a little bit down memory lane. Do you remember all of the strikes, relentless it felt like, didn't it? With what was then called junior doctors, resident doctors, they are now known as. It was, of course, all over pay. And they were always talking about pay restoration back to the levels of 2008. They had actually multiple pay rises. Many people were very critical of the Labour government when they came in, and essentially many people argued just handed over pay rises to junior doctors. The Labour Party would push back and say, well, actually, hold on, we did what we had to do to try and get the NHS functioning again. Up to speed? Good. What's happened now is that the BMA are now potentially canvassing their members, looking at whether or not they'd be in favour of more strike action for more money. Aaron Bastani, you're across the numbers on all this. Enlighten the viewers.
So the BMA are presently balloting their members for potential industrial action all the way through to July the 7th. If they then give the yes, the go-ahead, they'll then have a mandate to go on strike between, I believe, the end of July and the start of January. They probably would look at Christmas because that's when you have the most leverage as workers in healthcare. Junior doctors, resident doctors, presently receive in real terms about 23% less than they did in 2008. They've been offered for this year 4% plus a consolidated payment of £750, which I think on average means about 5.4%. Obviously, if you earn more, it's a bit less. If you earn less, it's a bit more than 5.4%. So it's 4% plus a one-off payment of £750. They've seen their pay rise over the last 3 years by a significant amount, by more than 20%, primarily, obviously, because of that big pay agreement they got with the incoming Labour government last year. They would like a further real terms pay rise, or a pay rise, rather, of 29%, so they get back to where they were in terms of what they could buy with their money in 2008. So the offer is about 5.4%. They want it to be about 29%.
Well, some of those people on that screen look like they were probably in nappies in 2008. So if you weren't even in your profession in 2008, so you knew your T's and C's when you entered a profession, why are you wanting pay restoration to before your time?
Well,
what am I missing?
It's just a good bargaining position for trade unions to take. Say, this is what we used to be paid. This is what people used to be paid for doing this job. Now they're not paid it. I could never get particularly worked up about people asking to be paid more. That's reasonable, especially when you have high inflation going on, as we do now. What I am always against is doctors and nurses striking. I think it's simply wrong and indefensible. They simply if they wanted to go on strike, they should have chosen another profession to go into. It's not something you can't withdraw mercy from people for money. And if their leaders are any good, they should be able to get reasonable salaries for their members without causing strike action and causing the misery and the postponed appointments and operations and everything else which results from it. So I'm against that. But in general, the problem is probably that we as a country can't afford the levels of medical care we're trying to provide as we carry on living. And they were junior doctors a few years ago. Now they're resident doctors. The danger is if they're not paid more, they'll be Australian doctors before we know what they are. And that is the difficulty. We are not training enough doctors in this country, as I understand it. We're importing doctors to make up for it. And
BMA support those.
They're not paid as well as they would be in, for example, Australia, where the working conditions are better. So the difficulty is in retention, and it's not really a matter of whether they go on strike. It's a matter of whether we can afford, with our current arrangements, to have the health service which we run. And this is again, we come to the same point. This country has to start living within its means. It has to work out what it wants to spend money on. And quite frankly, maintaining a Cold War superpower nuclear deterrent, just for example, does not go with running a decent health service in times like these. You're going to have to decide which it is you want to do. I mean, bombing Ukraine is also something we can't afford to do if we want to have a decent health service. We just can't do it. We have not got the money to do both those things.
The last round of strikes, the public was broadly in support of the junior doctors earning more money. Public opinion, there was a poll done, I think it was yesterday or there or thereabouts, basically said that actually public support for further strikes would not necessarily be on the doctor's side. What do you think to that?
I suspect most of the public would hear that their pay in real terms is 23% lower than 2008, and most people would say that's unfair. We should perhaps try and go back to where you were. And I don't
hold on, but where else does this apply? Am I being a bit thick? Because where else does someone go into a job, go back God knows how many years and go, hold on a second, because if I do a direct correlation between what the pay was God knows how many years ago, often before I even entered this profession, to what it is now, I want the same pay backdated.
But it's about what you can
Not backdated, restored.
What standard of living you can access as a nurse, as a resident doctor, as a consultant, as a whatever. And clearly, the standard of living one would associate with those professions or with a teacher or whatever is not the same as it was, in this case, 17 years ago. So that's why they're making that claim. I suspect most people say, OK, I understand that. I don't think you should be asking for all of that in one go. And I suspect, look, this is just a bargaining position. They want higher than the 4% plus £750. I suspect they'll get it. Are they really hoping for the 29% pay increase? No, I doubt it very much.
Muriel, you're a harsh woman because you've just got in touch and said if these doctors don't like their salaries, why don't they go do something else? But then who would be the doctors if no one's getting attracted to the profession, Muriel, because of the pay not keeping up essentially with inflation? Who's going to help us all when we get ill? Paul.
That's the problem.
Paul has got in touch and said, OK, Michelle, I would give them 10% more, but, he says, and there's a but, I would make them lock in, sign a contract and make them lock in and commit to the NHS for the next 10 years. That's quite a smart idea, Paul.
It is quite smart, and it's probably workable at some level too.
What do you think? Would you support that, locking people in?
We've talked about it before. I think there's something to it because, look, at the end of the day, the taxpayer, I think the average doctor to train them is about £250,000, maybe more. The idea that you can then just leave and earn more money when this society has obviously helped subsidise your training, I think that's unfair. So I think there's some wisdom to that.
David says, if the doctors want the pay level that they had years ago, let's give them the same mortgage levels that they would have had years ago, 2.5 times or potentially 3 times your average salary. They probably wouldn't like that, he says. Look, at the end of the day, we all want a functioning NHS, and I'm sure we all have a lot of respect for the people that choose to go into the NHS and dedicate their life to the service of each and every single one of us. I certainly wouldn't want a doctor to go to work and feel undervalued, would you? But I guess the million-dollar question there is, at what point does the kind of conscience of a health professional continually striking over money kind of kick in? I do like Paul's idea, though, of locking people in. That could solve quite a few problems, couldn't it? That's all I've got time for. Aaron Bastani, Peter Hitchens, thank you for your company tonight.
Pleasure.
Most importantly, thank you at home for yours. Have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow night.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After a day of sunshine and showers, it'll eventually turn dry into this evening. Only for a time, though, a return of some wet and windy weather from the west, leading us into an unsettled day tomorrow. But for the time being, a ridge of high pressure largely easing away any showers, but outbreaks of rain soon moving their way into Northern Ireland for the first part of the evening, and eventually into western parts of England and Scotland, and turning quite heavy at times, particularly across western areas, and quite blustery too, particularly around exposed coasts of Scotland. But even elsewhere across England and Wales, it's going to be quite a damp and dank start to the day. But with the cloud outbreaks of rain, that does mean it's going to keep temperatures up, so it should be still quite a mild start to the day. And I'm afraid the outbreaks of rain are set to continue for much of the day as well, particularly across Scotland, where still it's going to turn heavy and still quite blustery at times through the course of the morning. Fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, quite a wet start and some quite low cloud, leading to quite a misty, murky start, and fairly similar elsewhere across England and Wales, particularly western parts of Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall, some damp areas to start here. And it's set to continue through much of the day, still some quite heavy and blustery outbreaks, particularly across Scotland. Those central areas, parts of the southeast, any rain should eventually ease away, but it's still likely to remain quite cloudy, but it's still going to be fairly warm.